Hello and welcome to my third league match from the B division against Bryan. This is the feature game from our match because it showcases the most Rising Sun cards. First from Rising Sun is Kitsune, which gives you +1 Sun. This means there's an associated prophecy with Kitsune. We will see that prophecy soon. Next, Kitsune allows you to choose two different options from +2 coins, +2 actions. Each other player gains a curse or to gain a silver. The associated prophecy with Kitsune is Panic. Panic returns all treasures that you've played this turn to their respective piles and gives you +2 buys when you play a treasure that turn. The final card from Rising Sun in this kingdom is Continue. Continue is an event that costs 8 debt, and once per turn, you can play an action card that is not an attack and costs up to 4 from the supply, and then return to your action phase so that you can continue the rest of your turn. It gives you an extra action as well, so you are guaranteed to continue your turn. In this kingdom, the candidates for continue are Courtyard, Watchtower, and Smithy. As for the rest of the kingdom, we have Draw, plus cards from many sources: Smithy, Haunted Woods, Watchtower, and Courtyard, plus actions from Bandit Camp and Kitsune. We have Buy in Astrolabe, Charm, and Panic. We have Gain from Charm. However, we are missing Trashing. Panic will trash the coppers, but the estates cannot be trashed, and the only way to get rid of the curses will be from Watchtower, and that is an unreliable defense, especially at the beginning of the game. Without the curses, you would look to build something here with Bandit Camp and Haunted Woods, using Charm as your focal point. Bandit Camp is also a sort of focal point, as it interacts favorably, or at least not unfavorably, with Panic. The spoils would go back to the supply anyway, and with Panic you'll get +2 buys for your spoils. However, the consistency of that deck and the build up to that deck is dictated, largely decided by the amount of curses you take on. This is going to be one of those games that is divided into two parts. The first part of the game is how can I drop as many curses as possible into my opponent's deck, or how can I reduce the amount of curses that come into my deck. Once the curses have finished, then we can play another deck building game where we can see whether or not we should go after this Haunted Woods Bandit Camp Charm deck, or if we should do something else. Let's see how we start in this first mini game. That is, how many curses can I give my opponent? For cursing, there are two options. You have a Young Witch and you have Kitsune. Kitsune is far superior to Young Witch. It does so many more things. It sets in Panic, and Panic will get rid of all of your coppers for you. This is vital for building the Bandit Camp Haunted Woods Charm deck. Kitsune cannot be blocked. Kitsune is a reliable cursor, unlike Young Witch. Kitsune can also give you coins. It can give you silver. Once Panic sets in, you may need the extra money from the silver. Kitsune can give you plus actions. You may need that too. Overall, I think Kitsune is just a far superior cursor to Young Witch. As such, I'm going to try to open in such a way to get to Kitsune as soon as possible. There are a few ways to do that. One of the ways that crossed my mind was Smithy and Silver. That is very reliable and consistent at getting to 5. First though, I want to see what my opponent does before considering my opening choice here. They open with an Astrolabe, which was a bit strange to me. I think that was prompted by Young Witch and the Bane for Young Witch being Astrolabe. Since my opponent has a Bane, I am not going to open with the Young Witch. Young Witch Silver is also a decent way to get to 5. But I'm not going to go for the Young Witch, not just because of the Astrolabe, but because of all the other reasons I mentioned before. Instead here, I'm going to open with a Silver and a Watchtower. I think the Silver is much better at getting to 5 than the Astrolabe. My opponent goes for Smithy and Astrolabe instead. Alright, let's see how we both go on our opening shuffles here. Very different openings. Turn 3, my opponent gets to 3. Could be silver, could be watchtower. Goes for another astrolabe. I understood the first one, and this second one, I wasn't quite sure about the second one. Watchtower here, I can use it to draw a couple cards, or I can use it to top deck a silver from Delve. I could top deck a courtyard as well. I choose to draw, and I am rewarded with a Kitsune on turn 3. My opponent plays their smithy. The astrolabe helps them to get to 5. And this is probably going to be a Kitsune for them. It is. Now on 4, I have some options available to me here. One of them is smithy, which I buy. Another one was to continue with our watchtower. That would find me my Kitsune, and then I could play it. The only downside is that I would have 4 debt. Instead, I opt for the smithy. My opponent gets up to a second Kitsune here. I play the watchtower, and I don't feel bad about playing the watchtower because I know you can't really draw dead in this kingdom once you could buy a continue. And as it turns out, I do draw the Kitsune dead, so I could continue. Instead, I opt to get a gondola, and that allows me to play my Kitsune to land a curse into my opponent's deck. And I opt to gain a silver from the Kitsune. Ordinarily, I wouldn't gain a silver there because I don't need the money to get to 5 anymore, but just because Panic is in the kingdom, I feel comfortable buying cards like Gondola and Silver. They'll all go back anyway, and then I can have bandit camps in the deck. Astrolabe for my opponent at the start of the turn. Help them get to 5 last turn. They play their Kitsune. Probably lands a curse. They do land a curse, and they get up to 5 again. So the Astrolabe is doing well for them. They've hit 5 3 turns in a row now. That's very good for them. And they opt for Haunted Woods here instead of a third Kitsune. I thought they might do the third Kitsune, but Haunted Woods was the card of choice instead. Haunted Woods is going to be very, very annoying in this kingdom. We already can't trash estates. We are taking on curses. That Haunted Woods attack is going to be brutal. I completely understand the Haunted Woods buy. I get up to 5 again here, and I buy a second Kitsune. Curse split is very, very important. 5 again for my opponent. What is that? 4 turns in a row. They go for a silver and a silver through Delve, sorry, and a watchtower. So now they're interested in blocking some of the curses. Let's see if they have it in hand here. 2 actions and give a curse. They don't have it, so that curse landed successfully. Take the 2 actions because we want to play the watchtower. Gondola gets saved. For next turn, there are only 2 sun tokens left on Panic. 6. This could be another Kitsune. Could be a Haunted Woods. Instead, I choose to continue with our Watchtower. The Watchtower is going to draw a heap of cards. Gives me the plus action. I find my smithy. I draw almost through my entire deck. I was looking for the second Kitsune. I knew that my opponent didn't have their Watchtower here, so I wanted to make the most of that opportunity. Unfortunately, Kitsune is in the bottom 2 cards. I am able to pay off the debt, and with 2, this could be a silver, it could be a courtyard. I choose the silver via the Delve. Again, largely prompted by the Panic. They're all going to go away anyway. Kitsune for my opponent lands, and we each have 2 curses at this point. They play a smithy. Let's see if they find a second Kitsune. That would be annoying. They don't, but they could continue. They choose to continue with a watchtower. They don't find Kitsune, but they find a Haunted Woods. I find a Kitsune in my hand here. I'm going to attempt to curse my opponent. I gain a silver because now Panic has set in. Everything goes back to their respective piles. My opponent blocks that curse from the Kitsune. Rather, they accept it, and then the Watchtower throws it in the bin. So, alright, fine. I have some Watchtowers too. Hopefully, they'll do something soon. And I buy a Haunted Woods. I have to top deck an estate, but I think that's a reasonable trade-off for getting the Haunted Woods. My opponent plays the Kitsune. I'm able to trash now, so the curse split is still 2-2. Panic sets in for my opponent. They choose to buy a Watchtower, and they're going to top deck this Watchtower. And they'll do that for a couple turns here, and that is going to be very annoying, actually. There's no chance that I will curse my opponent here. I know they have a Watchtower in hand. Still, I am going to give out the curse because that is a curse that I'm not receiving. Doesn't matter. I would like it to go into my opponent's deck, but if it goes in the bin, as long as it doesn't go into my deck. Take the action so we could draw with Watchtower. We draw 3 cards. We find a Smithy. I'm going to play the Smithy, draw dead. I could continue here and continue with Watchtower to draw a couple cards. Instead, I'm going to use my 5 coin here to buy a Bandit Camp. Remember, panic has set in. All of the treasures are returning to their piles. So the Bandit Camp is a very, very important card here. I at least will always have our spoils in the deck at this point. Opt to top deck the Bandit Camp, of course. Again, my opponent does this annoying, irritating play where they top deck a Watchtower. They're completely safe from Kitsune curses, and only at the end of this turn here do the Astrolabes get returned. So they were able to stay in play for a turn, but once they are discarded from play, they return to their piles. Bandit Camp for me again are spoils. The Haunted Woods, is in play. Not entirely sure if buying a card here is worth top decking to a state, so I choose to continue, and I will continue with our Watchtower. It is the most draws 4 cards, plus there's still some curses flying around. Watchtower could provide some defense. I find 2 Kitsunes off that Smithy, but we know where the Watchtower is in my opponent's hand, so I just get rid of 2 curses from the supply and stick my Haunted Woods into play. Pass it back to my opponent. They find a Kitsune, and luckily I have a Watchtower in hand. Unluckily, I have 3 Watchtowers in hand. It's fine because the curse split ended up 2-2. So we have these 5 stop cards that will never leave the deck, 3 estates and 2 curses that we have to work around. Bandit Camp for my opponent makes sense. They top deck their Bandit Camp along with 2 other cards because of my Haunted Woods attack. And look at this clever play. Now they continue. They have the extra buys from panic. So they bought the Bandit Camp, top decked it, and the other 2 cards from the Haunted Woods offset the attack by continuing with our Watchtower here. Clever. Bandit Camp nets them as spoils, which they top deck. Smithy will draw them the spoils. This is quite a good turn for my opponent. Kitsune gains them as silver and coins. No need for the curses now. And they pay off some of their debt. All of their treasures get returned. This is not a good hand for me here. I choose to take the coins from the Kitsune, and I'm just going to pay back my debt. There's no point in continuing here. I just walk away with my tail between my legs, so to speak. Kitsune into Watchtower for my opponent. They don't have a great turn here. They could opt to continue, but they choose not to. Probably not worth it. And now we've entered that second part of the game, the second mini game. How are we going to build here? Well, with just 5 stop cards, I think it's well worth it to build the deck with Bandit Camp and Haunted Woods. Charm is not going to be part of it because of panic. That's a waste of 5 coin. The Haunted Woods attack is so oppressive here that I want to stress or put emphasis on having a Haunted Woods in play every single turn. Let's see how we go about that. I take actions from this Kitsune because I know I have Watchtowers in the deck. I probably will need the actions. I choose here to not play this Watchtower, and instead I'm going to top deck a Bandit Camp. I had 2 coins from the first Kitsune. I had a spoils in my hand, that's 5. And the watchtower allows me to top deck a haunted woods. So I'll get another haunted woods in play next turn. So I have two of them. In theory, I can have one in play every single turn. It's probably not going to happen right now, but we're working towards that end here. My opponent draws through quite a bit of cards here. They get draw from Watchtower twice. They get a Haunted Woods down. Smithy comes out for them. And they get up to 9 and 5 buys. It seems like their deck is doing much better than mine. Opt for an undo here. So they have 6 and the 3 buys. I'm not sure if they want to save the spoils. They do choose to save the spoils. And they buy a Haunted Woods. A little bit of trickery here with the Watchtower in hand. They choose to top deck the Haunted Woods first and then top deck the other cards from their hand because of the Haunted Woods attack. If you do it in the other order, you don't get to top deck the Haunted Woods that you buy because you've top decked your Watchtower, so you can't resolve a Watchtower that's not there anymore. Just have to make sure you play things in the right order is all. It's the first time for both of us probably, so I was fine granting the undo hit there. No information gained really. I top deck our spoils. I'm not really sure why. I thought I could draw into the spoils is why, but I can't because I can't count to 6 apparently. So I leave my Haunted Woods in play, just pass it back to my opponent. So now I've had a Haunted Woods in play for 3 consecutive turns. Reasonably happy about that. I'm not making much progress otherwise, but at least I'm keeping up the Haunted Woods pressure. My opponent, again here, they just played the Haunted Woods and passed it back to me, probably because they had too much junk in their hand because of my Haunted Woods attacks. Yay, Haunted Woods. I take actions on coins from this Kitsune. I play my Smithy. More actions from this Kitsune. I find my Haunted Woods. Very important. Very important. I play the spoils. I have up to 10 here and 5 buys. So what I plan to do is buy a couple 5s and then continue with our Watchtower to offset the Haunted Woods attack. Do make a couple mistakes. Do bear with me here. First, the Bandit Camp is the first 5 that I'll buy. I make the same mistake my opponent did earlier. I choose to top deck from the Haunted Woods attack first instead of from my own Watchtower. Obviously, you have to top deck the Bandit Camp first and then top deck the other cards from the Haunted Woods attack. And I said it would be 2 5s. I buy Young Witch instead. Young Witch does something. And this is the only thing Young Witch does that Kitsune doesn't do. It filters cards from your hand. It can discard 2 curses, 2 estates from my hand to alleviate the impact of the Haunted Woods attack. That's why I have the Haunted Woods, because here I can, well, later, not here. Later I can discard and have a better top deck of the Haunted Woods attack. So I continue with the Watchtower, draw into the Bandit Camp that I knew was there, pay off some debt, pass it back to my opponent. They've been under the Haunted Woods attack for a few turns well now. We'll see when they opt to actually buy something. Here they play their Haunted Woods and then their Watchtower. Watchtower again. Here's our spoils. How much do they come up with? They buy a Young Witch. Note that you cannot continue with the Young Witch, because continue specifically says it cannot be an action card. If you could have continued with the Young Witch, that would have been great too, because potentially you could discard a couple cards, then your Watchtower draws more that you have in hand. Doesn't work like that. You have to buy Young Witch outright. You can't continue with Young Witch. My opponent buys a Young Witch and then they top deck 5 cards. Not great. Bandit Camp. I will not top deck the spoils because I am looking for my Haunted Woods. Smithy first. We are still looking for the Haunted Woods. We don't find it. We don't top deck spoils because we're looking for it. We take coins. We take actions. We empty our hand with these Watchtowers because I am going to continue. Or I thought about continuing there, but I feel like in retrospect, continuing was a good play there just to find the Haunted Woods. I would have continued with Watchtower. As is, my opponent has a break. There's no Haunted Woods attack on them here. They play a Young Witch, dead. No Bandit Camp came before that, and they just pass it back to me. So I got away there, so to speak. My opponent was not able to capitalize on the turn with no Haunted Woods on them, and we are going to put back on that pressure straight away. We have a Haunted Woods in hand. Kitsune gives us actions, gives us coins. Play the Young Witch first so that the Watchtower draws more. Then I buy a Bandit Camp. I could buy another Bandit Camp here. I do buy another Bandit Camp. I don't have any any Haunted Woods attack on me, so I'm free to buy these cards without top decking any of the cards in my hand. And you guessed it, I should have bought a Continue there to keep playing on, but I didn't. New card. Mistakes will be made. My opponent passes again. So now I feel in control. My opponent has passed a good few times now. I've been applying that big pressure with the Haunted Woods, and I have more Bandit Camps than my opponent, so I have more economy. My opponent is struggling. They only have the one Bandit Camp, I think. I have 4 of them. They have Kitsunes as well, but so do I. Kitsune for money. You look at the work Young Witch is doing. Tremendous work. Tremendous work. I don't have to top deck 5 junk cards. I can only top deck 3 of them if I like. Spend the spoils. Get up to 5. Could be Bandit Camp. Could be a Haunted Woods. This probably should have been another Haunted Woods instead of another Kitsune. I wanted the Kitsune to draw more from the Watchtower, so I can play Kitsune for coins and actions and then draw up with Watchtower in tandem with the Young Witch cut in my hand size. Probably should have just been another Haunted Woods. That pressure is immense. It's crushing in this game. Bryan is actually unable to do anything on certain turns just because of the Haunted Woods pressure. They delve and they buy a third Kitsune like me. The piles are getting quite low here. The curses are out. There is 1 Watchtower left, and we are getting a heap of buys from Panic. So the estate pile may run. Something to keep in mind, our scores are level. Recall that we split the curses evenly. This is quite a good turn for me. Get up to 11. I do have to top deck a heap of these cards. That is unfortunate, but I'm going to offset the Haunted Woods attack with the final Continue from a Watchtower. So that empties that pile. I play my 2 Young Witches, draws me into some much better cards here. I can empty my hand with these Kitsunes to give me actions and coins. Actions and coins again. Please play actions and coins again. Okay, thank you. I gain the silver instead because I see a win here. I could have top decked that silver, but I didn't need to, or I didn't see the win yet. I understand. I didn't want to trigger the shuffle is why. My apologies. I didn't want to trigger the shuffle with all my good cards out of it, so I choose to gain the silver instead. I noticed that I'm getting close to winning off of the estate pile out. I was in some debt here because of the Continue, but without the debt, I would have been very close. Either through the estates or maybe 4 Bandit Camps and an estate will do the trick. As is, I have 4 and I'm going to load up on silver and pass it back to my opponent in the hopes that on the next turn I can pile out on the estates or on the Bandit Camps. I don't think my opponent can come even remotely close to that because they don't have as many Bandit Camps as I do. And they haven't put out any serious amount of money for a very, very long time. Here, this is only 7. They get another silver and they get a Kitsune. They top deck the Kitsune. We see our Kitsunes here. Young Witch filter helps tremendously. It will allow my Watchtower to draw more cards. I should have probably top decked the spoils there, but I think I have the win in hand at this point. Kitsune gives me a heap of money. Could top deck the spoils now. Yep, that'll give me the money that I need to empty the estates and win this game. We somehow managed to come up with 18 and 11 buys, so that'll be enough for the estates. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the showcase of Kitsune, Panic, and Continue.